With the release of Wasteland 3, a game that I've been anticipating since I originally made a pledge for it back in 2016, I've had the chance to return to a series that, for me, is simultaneously the forebearer and successor of the old Interplay Fallout games. As a major fan of post-apocalyptic settings and role-playing games in general, and spurred in no small part by the drip of backer news sent out over 4 long years, and not to mention a beta that I intentionally avoided playing just to not mar my first impressions of the final release, I have finally had a chance to give it a real go on the weekend of its release. And I gotta say, Wasteland 3 is great. It is very good. It's fantastic. Wasteland 3 is everything that I wanted this game to be, iterating on Wasteland 2 and expanding it so thoroughly while at the same time taking the series in a new direction. It's got me so excited that I felt the need to make a video about it. Now, with that being said, keep in mind that this video is not a full review of the game. Rather, it's a first impressions video based on about 10 hours or so of gameplay. So the purpose of this video is to give you a closer look at the game if you're on the fence about it, or if you genuinely have no idea what the game is about, which, oddly enough, I'm finding out is the case with several of my more casual gaming friends. Anecdotal to be sure, but nevertheless. So sit back and listen to me regale about how much this game scratches my third-person free-motioning camera old-school CRPG style game itch. Because technically speaking, Wasteland 3 is not isometric. Picking up from the conclusion of Wasteland 2, the Desert Rangers have been decimated following the reactivation of the Cochise AI. The only way that they were able to stop it for good was to drop a nuke on their own citadel, and the aftermath have seen the leadership shaken up and supplies running dangerously low. And I guess you can say that these are spoilers for the ending of Wasteland 2, but it's also blatantly stated in the opening cutscene of Wasteland 3. Anyway, that's when the Rangers are contacted by the Patriarch, the overlord of the Colorado area, who offers them a deal. He will supply the Rangers with the food and the equipment that they so desperately need in exchange for their help to bring his rebellious children to him, alive, before they tear down what he worked so hard to build up. It's a deal that the Rangers can't really refuse, and so they pack their bags and send 50 of their finest to the frozen wastes of Colorado. I guess after all that time patrolling the Mojave, they finally got that nuclear winter that they were all hoping for. However, the convoy is attacked by a fanatical cult before they reach what is to be their headquarters, so it's up to the surviving Rangers, your playable characters, to start carving out a name for yourself in this foreign territory and rebuild your forces before striking out against the Patriarch's children. In true RPG fashion, you're given a lot of tools in order to make this happen. Aside from the usual companions that you find in these types of games, Wasteland 3 retains the series' ability to create an unlimited number of your own blank slate PCs and build them however you want. Now, when you start the game, you're forced to create 2 playable characters instead of your usual 1. You're also allowed a maximum number of 4 custom characters in your party, leaving the remaining 2 slots open for the various companions that you find in the game. In other words, more traditional RPG NPCs that join your party. In this way, the game tries to strike a balance between spreading out your skills meticulously across created characters that you have full control over, while still trying to show off a lot of its splendid writing and world building and characters through quips and discovering the inhabitants of this brave new world that the heroes find themselves in. And so it's trying to find that middle ground between utterly letting you min-max your characters while still trying to show off the chops of the game's writers. However, mechanically, this also functions as a way to incorporate the game's much-touted co-op feature, wherein you are required by the game to keep a minimum of 2 custom PCs in your party so that you and a friend can each control one as you explore the frozen wastes. As an RPG developed by genre veterans, here you're gonna find all of the bells and whistles you expect to. There are in-depth creation options and a plethora of skills to choose from. In fact, the game even goes out of its way to emphasize skill diversity among your party members so that you're not stymied over the course of your adventure. There are a lot of skills to choose from. Some of these skills serve multiple functions, as they range from being minimum requirements to use certain weapons without penalties, to giving you means to bypass obstacles in the overworld, or as skill checks during dialogue that give you bonuses or bits of information. Pretty standard stuff if you're used to role-playing games, but should be worth mentioning just so you see what kind of a role-playing game Wasteland 3 is. No character will be good at everything or even most things, so you really need to spread these abilities out. Aside from that, you'll face a number of different factions in the game, each with their own opinions of the Rangers depending on how you interact with them, as well as a world that really does react to your decisions. Dialogue changes based on the choices you've made, and there's a strong hint that these different reputation levels that you get with these different factions will give you access to certain plot developments as you progress through the campaign. Thus far, I've actually jailed 2 people in my base for crimes they've committed against the society that we are trying to establish here, and I've recruited a number of NPCs to serve in different auxiliary jobs around my base, including doctors, jailers, and armorers. So far, it's a great system that makes you feel like you're really making an impact on the world, and that you're rising up to a position of leadership and authority, and that you're struggling to carve out your niche in it. However, the real meat of Wasteland 3 is arguably its turn-based combat system, and here it really shines. It's gripping and it's satisfying, with plenty of tactical depth to make even the smallest skirmishes make you stop and think about your choices. Aside from multiple different kinds of traditional firearms that each have their own kinds of ammunition, by the way, there's also flamethrowers, rocket launchers, and even weapons that capitalize on the weird science theme that these alternate histories like to focus on. You'll have a number of different combat skills, including the addition of a new ultimate skill that's built up by pummeling your opponents. When your meter's fully charged, you can unleash a devastating attack that can help turn the tides of battle in your favor. And that's not even to mention the interactive environments where explosions can change the tactical makeup of the battlefield and force you to walk away a now burning pitch of land, or the advantages of having the high ground to increase your hit rate, or weapon range, or even the different types of cover, which are admittedly either half cover or full cover. But these all come into effect when you're actually traversing the battlefield and trying to get that edge on your opponent. Wasteland 3 uses an action point economy, but it also uses visuals that are very familiar to people who are used to playing tactical games, at least modern tactical games. During combat, you'll see blue squares and orange squares, and the blue squares will represent where you can move while still having enough AP left over to fire your weapon, while the orange represents your total movement for the turn. And if you have action points left over by the end of your turn, you can actually bank them to have more action points on your next turn. Or maybe you'll be in a situation where defending yourself is the better course of action. Or if you've got enough AP, you can get a character to enter an Overwatch mode while you're defending a particularly good piece of ground and you're trying to lure your enemies into an ambush. The flow of combat is also really quick without being breakneck. The effects of weapons feel very satisfying, and the amount of options that you're given is nothing short of a breath of fresh air. Every type of weapon build I've used thus far actually feels like it's a viable build, and I relish going into combat to test my mettle against the AI. But really, I just relish the opportunity to be able to play Wasteland 3 as a whole. It masterfully executes on all of its objectives to bring you a gritty game chocked full of black humor, filled with a bunch of great characters.
The name's McTavish, and I'm from Glasgow. Shit, that's not it. Lick me, ballbag. Sod F, you wee. Cunts. Come on, boil your head, you jammy git. Hey, you've a face like a scalp there, you dobar. Aye, that'll do.
Some solid writing, and game systems that are a treat for any RPG fan to play. It feels like an evolution from Wasteland 2 in all of the right ways, and the time spent waiting for this game to drop has been well worth it so far. Wasteland 3 is excellent, at least for the single player campaign. I haven't tried multiplayer yet, so I can't speak for it, but I have read that it has more than its fair share of serious bugs. And I also do want to state that while I have had a few annoyances here and there, like the game locking when trying to change character portraits or not remembering my party order, I've had a relatively bug-free experience so far. I mean, I guess it can use for a few optimization fixes, but other than that, it's been pretty solid to play. So with that said, I honestly feel that if you are even remotely curious about it, I'd say it's well worth your time, especially for the asking price of $80. With as much content as it has, and with how satisfying it feels to play it, I think that a full retail price is fair for what you're getting out of the game. As far as first impressions goes, Wasteland 3 knocks it right the hell out of the park, and I cannot wait to get back to seeing this one through right to the end.